Well, I want to welcome you all to another brown bag lunch. We did take a little bit of a break in January and February, but we thought now as spring is starting to be felt a little bit, I'm glad the sun came out finally, that we would begin the brown bag series once again. So thank you for coming out. When we were talking about what this brown bag lunch should focus on, we looked at the calendar and discovered that Easter was a little bit later than usual this year, and that actually Fastelavn, and of course then Ash Wednesday that follows shortly thereafter, fell in March. So we thought it would be appropriate to focus on Fastelavn. And as we discussed the idea, our intern said, well, we can make Fastelavnsboller, Fastelavn buns, and so that's, or rolls. It is boller buns, but they look more like dessert rolls to me. So they have done that. Fastelavn. It is a special time in Denmark, and in fact, in Denmark, it's sometimes referred to as the children's Halloween, or what would be more similar to what we know here as Halloween, as kids dress up. But I'm going to let Julie tell you more about contemporary Fastelavn celebrations, and I'm just going to give you a little background to the evolution of Fastelavn as a ritual in Denmark. I do so arising from some family experiences. As I remember in 1984, when we were living in the south of Denmark, just south of Ribe, in a little village called Reisby, that our kids were going to the school, and as Fastelavn approached, their anticipation began to grow, and they began to talk with each other as to what their costumes were going to be. And our daughter, Eva, was bound and determined to have the best costume. And so we spent some time searching in the stores in Ribe and in Esbjerg for what she wanted. She ended up wearing a Kermit the Frog mask and a Miss Piggy wig. And it took the day. Now, I don't know if that was because she was an American student in the 4th grade in the little school, or whether it was the best costume, but it was a lot of fun. I also was aware of Fastelavn from the Danish Christmas song that one sings when dancing around the Christmas tree. And for those of you that were at our last brown bag lunch, you know that we sang Christmas carols. But that one of the songs that we sang, and it's not a traditional carol, was Nu har vi jul igen. And it goes something like this, and I'll apologize once again for my singing, but Nu har vi jul igen, og nu har vi jul igen, og julen var ikke påske, nej det ikke sant, for indimellem kommer faste. And what that means in translation is now it's Christmas again, and Christmas lasts until Easter. And then the refrain is, no, that's not true, because in the middle comes Lent. And to me, that's an interesting statement as the families, the kids dance around the Christmas tree, because they're very much aware, even at that point of Christmas time, that Easter is coming, and that Easter is another wonderful festival in the church year. But then there's the reminder that in the middle comes Lent, and it is Lent that also contributed to the rise of the customs, the rituals surrounding Fastelavn. So the Danes are aware of the church calendar, even though many of us here in the United States look at the Danish population and think, maybe, or conclude maybe they're just a little bit more secular than we are, because as many of you know, maybe the churches aren't as full in Denmark as they are here. But there is a knowledge of the church here, and it's found in these ritual festivals like Fastelavn. Even the name Fastelavn suggests the time of fasting, of Lent, when one is to give up something in preparation for the celebration of Easter. Of course, then comes Easter. And that's a very, very important holiday in Denmark. In part, I think because it's coming in the spring and after the long, dark winter, everyone is really interested and anxious to be outside, and the weather is oftentimes good in the spring. I'll tell you this as an aside, has nothing really to do with Fastelavn, but it is this longing for light and for the spring to come. When we were living in Denmark in 83, 84, we didn't see the sun from January 8th until March 31st. It was cloudy and foggy, not unlike it was here this morning, as well as then in the midst of the winter, the sun rose about 9 o'clock and set about 4 o'clock. When the sun reached noon, it went behind the gables of the house across the street from us. So it was a dark time. And I remember on March 31st, the daffodils came out. It was just before Easter. The daffodils came out, the sun came out, the sky was blue. I wanted to tear all my clothes off and just lay in the sun and soak it up. I think that might account for some traditions that one finds in Denmark as well today. But at any rate, that wanting to see the sun, and Easter is that time. That's followed by Pentecost, and in Denmark, Pentecost is also celebrated with days off. It's known in Denmark as Pinsa. That's followed by Ascension Day. I love the Danish word for that, Kristelig Himmelfartsdag. That means Christ's heavenward journey day. And then, as many of us here in Elkhorn are aware, Sankthansaften, which comes on June 23rd, the night before the festival day of John the Baptist. And that, of course, is tied to the church tradition that John the Baptist was born 6 months before Jesus on December 24th. So it's tied to the calendar once again. Another religious day that many of us here in the United States are not familiar with is Mortensaften, the evening of St. Martin. It's in November and commemorates the martyrdom of St. Martin, for whom Martin Luther was born. And by that time, we've reached almost the beginning of the church year, and that is Advent. Advent, the 40 days beginning before Christmas, and so we have the celebration of the church year. Now, in Lent, or in preparation for Lent, in Europe, in medieval Europe, that became a time known as Carnival. And Carnival, the root word for that comes from the Latin Carnival, which means to be without meat, or to do without meat. And so as the medieval Christians approached the Lenten season, it became traditional to have maybe an overindulgence of some of these foods that one was going to give up during Lent. And along with that came many parties and celebrations. This was also probably tied to even pre-Christian fertility celebrations that would occur in the spring, naturally around March 21st, when we have the spring equinox. So these were celebrations that were not unusual. It was in 325 at the Council of Nicaea that the Catholic Church ordained that there should be a 40-day period before Easter when one would prepare for the coming, or the death and then resurrection of Jesus. And so that set the stage for then this celebration that occurs before the beginning of Lent, marked by Ash Wednesday. The 40 days, and the fact that it was 40 days before Easter, is not unusual when you think of it, as it is very symbolic of many instances in the Bible. Moses, when he went up to the top of Mount Sinai, was up there 40 days and 40 nights. Or we think of the flood narrative, when Noah and the ark were floating on the flood for 40 days and for 40 nights. And then you may recall from the New Testament when Jesus goes into the wilderness. It's for 40 days and 40 nights when he's tempted. So that was the thinking behind this period of 40 days in preparation for Easter. And it was again a reminder of the sacrifice and preparation for the sacrifice that Jesus makes on Good Friday. So this was the religious time. But the time prior to that then is the time of celebration. And that's when some of the traditions that are still carried on in Denmark, although they have a slightly different text to them, begin. There was, for example, the slåkatten af tønne. I know some of you know that one. That's when you beat the cat out of the barrel. A black cat is put in a barrel, and then that barrel is beaten until the cat falls out. And Julie was doing some research, so she clued me in on this a little bit further, that then actually the kids would set upon the cat and beat it to death. I would imagine that they would have to really catch the cat first, though, because that cat in the barrel would have probably, once it came out of there, would have been just crazed and have shot out. Why a black cat? Well, we know that black cats are, at least there's a superstition associated with black cats, bad luck, but it also is a symbol of the plague. And you may remember that the Black Death did decimate, literally decimated much of Europe during the medieval period. And so it was this idea of beating the bad spirits or the spirit of the plague out and driving it out of town, being free of it. And so that was what lay behind this beating the cat out of the barrel. In 1883, a Danish pastor said, this really is not appropriate treatment of animals. And so very quickly it was given up. But there's still the tradition of putting a stuffed black cat in a barrel along with lots of candy. I'm going to let Julie say more about that. And then beating the cat out of the barrel. The person who first knocks the barrel open and the candy begins to come out is known as katatoning, or the cat queen. And then the last piece when it's knocked down is the katakon, or the cat king. And they are crowned, and I guess they rule for the day until Ash Wednesday and Lent begins, because then there is no, then the period of preparation has begun. Another tradition is the Fastelavn. It is a bundle of twigs, hopefully fresh fruit branches with the buds on them, that is bundled together and used to flog or to beat one another. The tradition has it that parents beat their children on Good Friday to remind them of the suffering of Christ. And that has changed somewhat. I'm going to let Julie talk about that as well. Also, during the medieval period, it was not unusual for young men to carry these Fastelavn, I can't think of a better word than a bundle of twigs, and to playfully flog young women who they might be enamored of. And so that was part of, it probably has its roots in the fertility rituals that predated the coming of Christianity. So Fastelavn has a rich and deep history, but it carries on today in some of these traditions, and I'm going to let Julie say a little bit about that at this point.